Well, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. Welcome to Material Issues, episode number 89. I'm Mark Hershberger of Pop Detective Records. I'm over here on the East Coast, South Jersey to be specific. And joining us, as always, my very good friend from the West Coast, president of the International Pop Overthrow Festival, busy all over the world, but not too busy to join us tonight on Material Issues, David Bash. How you feeling tonight, my friend?
I'm doing well, Mark. How are you?
I'm great, actually, right now. I know you and I were discussing some health issues the last couple of days. We're both, find ourselves in various states of but it's all good. We're great. I'm feeling great. We got a great guest tonight. I'm happy. Let's let it roll.
We could philosophize about this, for hours, and talk about our various lifestyles and what this all means in the big picture. But ultimately, the truth is, we're just old.
We're just getting old. Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. We're still above ground. We're still upright. So therefore, I'm grateful, and I'm having a great time here on Material Issues.
Me too. I finally got.
There it is.
The butcher cover. I went to Amazon, got this really cool frame, and there it is.
Nice. David Bash's butcher cover, Beatles peeled cover. He's always wanted one, and that's going to have a nice place in your wall.
Again, I'd seen plenty along the way in my record buying expeditions, but the prices were always just too high, and I was so fortunate to find this one at a very reasonable, if not remarkably low price. But that was
Stump the Butcher. That's got to be your good friend checking in.
Is it Mr. Borak? I don't think he. You know what? That doesn't sound like something he would say. It's a little too rudimentary for John. He's generally more clever than that. Not to put down whoever
that was. No, we love.
Yeah, I guess we just lost a viewer. I didn't think. I didn't think about that.
I don't.
By the way, I rewatched that Record Safari documentary, the one.
Oh yes.
That I had complained about, and I haven't gotten through it all the second time, but there's this one guy who, and you can see he's got a prominent vinyl collection behind him, and he's saying, "You'll notice that there are no CDs on this wall." That really makes a statement, doesn't it? And my thought was, yeah, the statement is you're a jackass. Again, anyone who refuses to buy CDs for any sort of aesthetic reason is missing out on so much music that you'll never see on vinyl. I mean, honestly, we've had a lot of great vinyl reissues, but we will not see. I mean, literally thousands of music that's come out on CD reissued on vinyl. It's not going to happen. So anyone who refuses, and again, this works both ways. There are people I know who will not buy vinyl for whatever reason, either space or, again, just an aesthetic thing, or just to be just for snobbery purposes. Mm-hmm. And they're making the same mistake. There's a lot of music that's never going to be reissued on CD. There's a lot of current music, and one particular person I'm thinking of is very much all about current music. There's a lot of current music that's only being issued on vinyl now. I mean, the kids love vinyl, and even bands in their 30s and 40s are starting to join the vinyl bandwagon, and they don't think people are buying CDs anymore, so they reissue things exclusively, or they issue their albums exclusively on vinyl, and people only buy CDs. They just can't have that music.
I know.
And it's not like any of these people are saying, well, I'll just listen to it on Spotify. They won't listen to it at all, right? Because those people will either listen to vinyl, listen to CDs, or they'll listen to nothing.
Right.
So anyway, just food for thought. If you're one of those people who eschews the other format, just really just sit up and get out of your snobbery box and just think about what you're missing.
Wake up
and get both formats. They both have it right. They both have their advantages and disadvantages, but because they have their advantages, get both. That's my recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, enough of that. We can
Enough.
babble anytime, but
we'll babble.
Right now we have an esteemed guest to bring on.
Yeah.
She has been a writer for the San Francisco Chronicle for many, many years, initially covering the Oakland A's baseball team. And now she's covering the San Francisco Giants baseball team across the bay. She has been a member of the Baseball Writers Association of America for many years. And in fact, she was the president of the BBWAA for a while. And she's a Hall of Fame voter, which, of course, the Hall of Fame has been on the minds of baseball fans everywhere since the vote was revealed a couple of weeks ago. And I mean, let's face it, it's always on baseball fans' mind. It's probably the most argued about baseball subject. And that makes for fun and, well, maybe all night long. Anyway, enough of these words. She has a limited time she can spend with us, but we're really grateful. Would you please give a huge Material Issues welcome to Susan Slusser?
Hi,
there she is.
Hey, how are you?
Very good to see you, Susan. This is a thrill. Material Issues is not all about just music. Although David and I are both intertwined with a lot of musical things, but we like to branch out, and we have branched out many times with some baseball related guests, some Hall of Famers.
Yeah, we've had Jack McDowell and Billy Sample to be
I know both of them well. Yes,
I'm sure. Yeah.
They were wonderful. So when David brought it up and said that there's a possibility you could be on here, I was absolutely thrilled. So, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you again.
That's really cool. I went to college with Black Jack, so I like coming on a same podcast. That's great.
Oh, cool.
That's cool. Well, as David said, Hall of Fame, Scott Rowland. I have to address, my little elephant in the room. Is that a yay or a nay from Susan Slusser?
I have no problem with Scott Rowland being in. My feeling on kind of the 90s and 2000s is the era is very wildly unrepresented in the Hall of Fame. The steroid era kind of has left, I think with a lot of people, and we could get into the whole steroid thing too, but you can get any group of people and you're not going to get 75% of them to agree on the steroid issue. So the top two guys aren't going in, but there's a lot of other guys who have kind of been caught in the wake of all of that. And that's left that whole era very underrepresented. Scott Rowland, it maybe in some other eras might not have gotten in, but for me, you judge guys on their era, and he certainly was one of the greats of his era.
That's a very good point.
This is an issue that I have with a lot of people, because after Rowland, the real big backlash to Hall of Fame voting came with the selection of Harold Baines, which of course was a Veterans Committee vote, not a writer's vote. Right. What people don't understand, and I can say this, I'm a Bill James disciple. I've had his book since the early 80s. I was a member of SABR for a few years. So one thing I think I know about is the Hall of Fame voting history, and people will use Harold Baines and now Scott Rowland as an example that the standards of the Hall of Fame have gone downhill. And I know for sure that there have been players worse than Scott Rowland, and even some players worse than Harold Baines, who have been historically throughout the Hall of Fame voting, been elected in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 70s, especially from the Veterans Committee. We had some rather egregious selections from people who don't understand that if you hit 300 in 1928, it's not the same as hitting 300 in 1968. I always want to take issue with people who feel that way, that the standards are low. I don't think they are at all.
For me, Harold Baines is definitely not a Hall of Fame player. A very good player, but not a Hall of Fame player. But I think Scott Rowland, look, a lot of people will say like borderline shouldn't be in. I used to be one of them, but now I'm starting to feel like because of the era's underrepresentation, I'm starting to be a little more big haul. I used to never vote all 10 places on the ballot. Now I vote all 10 places, in part to keep some guys on the ballot who should continue to be considered every year. I think that's a little bit of an underlooked thing that we all try to do. If somebody's worthy, to keep them considered, you have to get 5% every year to stay on the ballot. But yeah, Roland is, when you judge him of his time, I think is worthy. Harold Baines, I'm still not quite sure gets there as good a player as he was. And that was, you know, as you said, the Veterans Committee. Now, I was just on the last, you know, we're now the ERA's committee. I was just on the last ERA's committee that put Fred McGriff in. Fred McGriff is a Hall of Famer. So why that committee went with Harold Baines instead of some other very worthy guys who are still under consideration from the ERA's committee, I'm not quite sure, but you could look at the composition of that Veterans Committee and it might help explain it a little bit.
I think the composition of the Veterans Committee is incredibly crucial when you only have 16 people and getting them in a room yet, which is how a lot of people have been voted in from the Veterans Committee that clearly don't deserve it. But you mentioned, you say you're not sure why Harold Baines got in and others don't. I have a theory about that, and you'll know better than me because you actually have dealt with these people, you know, on a personal basis. But Harold Baines has always been thought of as a nice guy, a quiet guy. Same thing with Fred McGriff. Same things, and then you got guys like David Ortiz, who even though there's a shadow of steroids around him, well, he's Big Papi, after all. So of course we're going to put him in, and that's the writers. But then you got guys like Dick Allen, who somebody just asked if they should be a Hall of Famer, and you've got guys like Albert Bell, and now you've got a guy like Jeff Kent, who clearly you've dealt with before. Guys who are thought of as jerks by not only fans, but I'm sure many of the writers who have had to interview them. And that, you know, they're certainly borderline cases. You can't argue against any of them being borderline. And some people would say they're beyond borderline, they should be in, but they're not in. So do you think, even with the writers and the Veterans Committee, do you think personality does play a big role in this?
I don't think it's a big role, not enough to account for 75%. You know, the not being able to get there. It's a big number to get to 75%. As Ken Rosenthal always likes to say, you know, you can't get 75% of people to agree on what pizza toppings to get. So it's a tough standard, and I'm not sure that I would say some of the guys that you mentioned, Albert Bell, Kent, even, are slam dunks. I think they're also kind of borderline candidates. Where
no, that's what I was saying. I agree with you.
Where you could pick out something from any of them and say, well, yeah, he meets this standard, but not that standard. Either didn't have the hardware or the longevity. You know, Dale Murphy always gets the longevity arguments and the tailing off very quickly. There's always something. To me, Jeff Kent should be in the Hall of Fame. I think that when you look at his numbers compared to Scott Rowland, obviously he's got better offensive numbers. Rowland has better defensive numbers, but didn't have the offensive numbers. So I think, especially considering those two positions, third base and second base, are really underrepresented along with that era, I think both of them should be in. And I'm hoping maybe, you know, guys like Rowland getting in will help Kent when he gets to the Veterans Committee in another 2 years from now.
I think it will.
I think it's interesting you talk about, and I never really thought about it that way, the era that they played in and everything about that. And I can see your point to it. But I'm very old school. I don't know what era might be your favorite as far as baseball is concerned. But when I think of Hall of Fame, I think of both sides. I think of great offense and great defense. And sometimes you have somebody who's maybe an incredible shortstop, but struggled to bat 230 his entire life, and he could have 12 Gold Gloves. But you're like, well, okay, he was really good defensively, but is he Hall of Fame? He could be Hall of Good, you know. And David and I argue about this all the time.
Those are the kind of guys who, by the way, you talk about the Hall of Fame voting guys in throughout their history. Bobby Wallace and Rabbit Moranville are two guys like that who would have won multiple Gold Gloves, at least 10 probably. They got in because they had such good defensive representation. They had such a good reputation defensively, but they couldn't hit, especially Moranville. He was awful. But yeah, I mean, those are the kind of guys who people would argue now. Susan, why do you, one thing we saw this year that we had never seen before in the Hall of Fame voting is the rapid ascent of certain guys. I mean, some guys went up 20% from the year before. And it wasn't just one, it was a few of them. And this was unprecedented, I guess. What do you think is the cause of that right now?
Well, some of that is other guys coming off the ballot. And in this case, I think specifically because some guys who'd been clogging, because some people just were never going to vote for them. Clemens, Bonds, and Kurt Schilling had all come off the ballot. So I think that provides some leeway with the people that were voting for them for many years to then add somebody else. But they, look, I was a Bonds voter. I was a Clemens voter. I put them in every year knowing they weren't going to get in. But, I think they should be in. So then this year you wind up with a couple extra spots.
Yeah, I guess that is something that happened, and it's not going to become a crowded ballot for a little while. So we may still see that. Have you always voted for 10 people?
No, when I first got the vote, which I can't even remember when, probably in the mid 90s, I was very much only going to vote for guys I absolutely thought were slam dunks. The first guy I remember voting for was Ricky Henderson. So it was guys like that. Now, that's a crazy standard.
Hold that
thought. Hey, Susan, while David's running to get probably some memorabilia there, what is your favorite era of baseball?
Well, I grew up a baseball fan in the 70s. So, I've got a lot of fond memories of the 70s. And I grew up next to the Oakland Coliseum. So, especially the 70s days.
I had this made, Susan.
Very nice. Very nice.
Now that's baseball cards and a Hall of Fame picture.
Hey, so I've finally come to the realization not everyone is Ricky Henderson. Maybe my standards are a little too high. Not everyone is a slam dunk. But I was BBWA president a year nobody went in when Bonds and Clemens first were on the ballot. Right. And I think out of either confusion or trying to make a statement, a lot of people just didn't vote for anybody, or certainly not enough to reach 75%, which was, I thought, ridiculous. There were certainly Hall of Famers, even if you didn't like the steroid guys in that year. So I now really, and having been to Cooperstown numerous times in the last 10 years, it's a museum. It tells a story of cherished American institution. And I am now kind of the mind, if somebody's borderline and has a lot of really good arguments for, I think they should go in. Whereas before I was like, no, if there's even the slightest argument against, I'm not voting for them. I've really shifted my thinking. And it's funny because a lot of people, the steroids era really turned them off on the Hall of Fame in general. I'm a little bit the opposite. I'm kind of like, yeah, that was still a valid era of baseball. I didn't vote for the steroid guys initially. When Bud Selig went in immediately, and La Russa and Bobby Cox, and they were some of the leaders of that era, I thought, I'm not just going to hold this entire era against two guys who happen to have evidence in court cases. When I know there are players who are connected to steroid. I'm sure there are guys who used performance-enhancing drugs who were never connected to them. I'm sure there's guys who've had whispers about them who never did do them. I don't know. I have no idea who did and who didn't, unless somebody's actually admitted it. So I'm just going to vote for anybody that I feel like belongs in, because it's a museum, and these are all guys that were probably doing it in the same era. So then you're judging them against their peers.
And way back in the classic days of the game, you don't know what was going on with everything. But you know what, I think you've just changed my perspective, which is wonderful with this show. The Hall of Fame is a museum. I never really I never really thought about it in that way before, but you're absolutely right. It's a museum of the game, and probably just to celebrate all eras and all people who did really well.
Mark, I'm insulted that I wasn't able to convince you to go that way, but
yeah, you never
has more
got
qualifications than I do.
I know she does. I know.
I'm just your goofy friend, you know. But
as a Susan, as a 70s fan, and David and I argue about this all the time as well. How do you feel about free agency, the designated hitter, interleague play, everything changing from really 70s baseball to modern baseball?
I've always been very much in favor of free agency. I'm a union employee myself. I certainly would rather always see money going to the workers rather than the owners. People are paying to see the players, not to line owners' pockets. Most of them are billionaires in other industries as it is. These are either sort of I don't want to say hobbies, but like kind of a love, an interest, an outside interest for them.
The status
or, right, a status or an investment, and they do very, very well as investments. I mean, I hear a lot of owners say, we don't even break even. Okay, maybe you didn't break even this year, which I have a hard time ever believing, really, even if it's a team that has low attendance or doesn't have a great media contract. I have a hard time believing that. But I certainly could say, well, let's look at the value of your franchise, because it's, in most cases, more than doubled for most owners that hang on to them for even a short amount of time. So, that's I have no problem with the players making as much as they can get. I wasn't on board necessarily with interleague play initially. Now that they've gone back to sort of a balanced schedule, I'm much more in favor of it. I mean, look, it's a done deal now, so it may as well at least do it where it's a balanced schedule, because it was crazy some years when like the AL Central was terrible and the AL East would play the AL Central, or the NL East would play the AL Central and beat up on them, and we saw that kind of stuff all the time. So now it's a little more fair, but there are a lot of rules changes that I have not liked in recent years. There's been all this flurry, but starting with the placed runner in extra innings, which there's no
don't
way.
Get me started.
Yeah, nobody should reach base who has not earned that.
Michael K would always call him the ghost runner, and I love that. He hated it too.
Yeah, no, it's absurd. I know they want shorter games, and that includes players, umpires, everyone. Writers. Nobody wants to be at the ballpark until 2 a.m. But that is just not baseball. And the fact that, you then have to account for that run, and it's ridiculous.
I have to know which side of this you're on as well, because David and I are both on different sides of this. Banning the shift.
Yeah, I'm not for banning the shift. I think I like anything the shift. The standard traditional defensive setup, the old-fashioned one up the middle, that's a shift, right? You're deciding where to put guys. And I think you should be able to put them wherever you want. I think that teams need to adjust.
If you can't hit the ball the opposite direction, then you shouldn't be playing in the pros.
This is one of the few conservative views that I actually have. Generally, I mean, when the DH came in, I was supremely happy, and only wished it was there when Ted Williams was still playing. But not that I was around then. But anyway, but yeah, for some reason. I don't, and I know this is very anti-intellectual of me, but it's always just bothered me that I don't like the fact that batting averages have gone that far down. I'm not a big batting average guy, but it's altered the stats so much. And I know we have WAR and we have OPS plus, and I'm all for that. I mean, my feeling is that anyone who doesn't like those stats just doesn't like math.
It's not just the shift affecting it. I mean, every pitcher throws 100 now. The spin rate is absurd. The scouting reports are so specific. It's a wonder to me anybody ever gets a hit, period. The shift hasn't helped, but I 100% agree. These are big league hitters. You need to adjust, even if it's just bunting enough to keep the defenses a little more honest. I've covered a couple of sluggers who were excellent bunters and who have gotten a little bit more of a favorable defense because they made it clear that they'll bunt once in a while. Their teams might not like it, but I think it's smart. So I don't know.
That is smart. Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out with the so-called shift ban. Again, I think anything's a shift, so I think even calling it a shift ban is ridiculous. But I think that it's going to have some ramifications that maybe some teams and maybe the league are surprised by.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like me that batting averages will start going up a bit? And I know it's not just. I know the spin rate. It's not affecting people hitting home runs. The spin rate and 100 miles an hour. They're certainly flying out of the park. It's got to be affecting. But batting averages have had a precipitous drop since the shift. No doubt about it.
I think some batting averages will go up. I think some batting averages will go down.
Really?
So, yeah.
Wow. Okay, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Susan, to be able to, just so for people who may be watching that don't understand as much as David and I do with baseball, to be somebody who votes for the Hall of Fame, how do you get to that position?
You have to be a member of the Baseball Writers Association for 10 years to get a vote, and consecutive years. You can't bounce out and back in, after 3 years later or something. So it's mostly people that have, obviously covered baseball full time for a significant amount of time. And then it used to be basically a lifetime vote, but about 7 or 8 years ago, the rule was instituted that once you retire and you get what's called a gold card, which has always existed, the gold card, you can still get into the ballpark when you're retired, essentially, because you've been a baseball writer who covered for at least 10 years. Those gold card holders can only vote for the Hall for 10 years, which I understand. There certainly were some head-scratching votes among some older members who were no longer even obviously paying attention to baseball. However, because of the eligibility rules, I think potentially this takes people away from voting for players they actually would have covered. I would have liked to have seen it been a little bit longer. I think that's the idea, is that you would have covered these players. That's why the 10-year rule exists. Plus, say, I think you have to have paid your dues a little bit.
Right. Yes. I wanted to bring up one more thing about the Hall of Fame before we shift into other baseball areas. But this is sort of a lighthearted and insignificant thing, yet people bring it up every year this happens. Invariably, there are always going to be people who get one vote for the Hall of Fame. And the response, again, invariably, the response you get from people is, how could anybody have thought that this player was a Hall of Famer? And I looked at that, and let me see if you agree. And you would actually know, I'm sure. I looked at it and I said, you know what? There are a lot of people who get one vote, but nobody seems to get 2, 3, or 4 votes. Now, why would it be that only one writer would think this person is a Hall of Famer? And I came to the conclusion that they don't think this person is a Hall of Famer, that they're just doing a solid for one of their buddies who maybe gave them some good quotes, or are friends of theirs, knowing they're not going to go in anyway, and also maybe not voting for 10 players. They had a room on their ballot. They said, let this guy be able to walk around and say, I got to vote for the Hall of Fame. Is that something that happens?
Yeah, and I think it varies from writer to writer. Obviously, we don't all do it, but I have done it, and I will tell you why. It's very specific. I never would have even considered it, and my very good friend Daryl Hamilton, who I covered in Texas, and was absolutely one of the best people I've ever known. He was on the ballot one year, and I did not vote for him, even though I really wanted to. Didn't vote 10 places that year. And then he was murdered several years later, and I still miss him to this day. And I really, really, really wish that I had thrown him a vote. He would have gotten such a kick out of it. He got no votes. So when Eric Chavez was on the ballot a few years ago, I covered him for 12 years. I know him better than probably any player I've ever covered. Fantastic guy, wonderful stand-up guy with the media, 6 gold gloves. I mean, this is not a guy who was completely without any merit when it comes to recognition. So I threw him a vote, and I think I'm pretty sure I was his only vote that year. And I was happy to explain it. You know, I had people all over me for it. And I was like, hey, look, I covered this guy for 12 years. He was fun to watch. He was one of the best at his position for a very long time, and a fabulous guy. And I did vote. I wouldn't have voted 10 places that year, or it's possible I might have bumped Kurt Schilling for him that year. But sometimes it's a player that somebody really legitimately feels should stay on the ballot for a while. And they want to try to get them to get that 5%. And maybe they've just gauged that player's worth more than other people have. And then it falls short. I haven't done that. I have voted for guys I wanted to keep on the ballot and had some backlash for that. Mark Burley this year was one. I got a little backlash for that. Do I think Mark Burley is a Hall of Famer? Probably not, but I'd like to keep him on the ballot because there were a lot of really good reasons to consider him, at least, and I think he should keep getting considered. And I didn't feel like, you know, some of the other guys on there were in danger of coming off the ballot anytime soon.
Right.
Yeah,
let's if we can, let's shift to more of your career. When you were covering the A's early on, that was right around the time Moneyball came into effect. Number one is, and I've read the book, so I kind of know the answer to this. But number one is the movie, which I'm very glad was made. Does that accurately depict it? And other thing, were you on? I mean, was there a big stir among the writers at that point saying, "What are the A's trying to do here? This is crazy."
I have probably written about Moneyball more than anything else in my career, so I could talk about this for days. So stop me if I start going on too long. I'm going to start with covering the A's at the time that the book came out, because Michael Lewis had been obviously around the team a ton the year before. We all got to know him. He's amazing. He's wonderful. He's obviously a fantastic writer. And the book was fascinating for me as much as anything, because he really nailed some parts of Billy Beane's essence that I probably understood but never had put into words, you know, trying to find a player who was not like himself when he was a player. I really think that got to some of the heart of Billy Beane as a baseball executive. And I talk about how long I covered Eric Chavez. I covered Billy Beane essentially from when he got hired as the GM until when I left for the Giants. So I know him extremely well. Now, my quibbles with the book are also probably my quibbles with the movie. Michael is great at finding a small example and using it to illustrate a bigger whole. And so the A's and some of their kind of quirkier, more interesting players kind of became his example of why the A's and the data-driven methods worked. But I will tell you that Scott Hatteberg and Chad Bradford were not the reasons that the A's were good in 2002. Miguel Tejada was the AL MVP that year. He is virtually not mentioned in the book or in the movie. They had Mark Mulder, Barry Zito, and Tim Hudson, the big three. They're barely mentioned in the book. They're only passingly mentioned in the movie. They had Eric Chavez. You know, they had a lot of really good big league players. I love Scott Hatteberg. I love Chad Bradford. Great stories, and they made for great parts of the book, but that's not why the A's were good. And of course, you know, at the end they wind up not winning that year. You know, they go to the playoffs, they got the 20-game winning streak, but that's obviously a little bit of a not flaw. It's interesting, but it makes it not quite your normal sports book or movie. And Mike Scioscia a few years after that told me, you know, like, he could have come and written this same exact book about our Angels that year. We had a couple of guys in our bullpen who'd come out of independent leagues. We had Scott Spezio coming out of nowhere and having a great year. And at the end, we would have won the World Series. And I thought, yeah, you're right. So that was the flaw with both the book and the movie, is the focus was maybe not quite, but all the number stuff was right. I mean, you know, it's David, that's being a guy who's in Sabre and knowing all the data stuff. That stuff was all accurate. And the portrayal of being in both the book and the movie is magnificent, spot on. I had never realized what a great actor Brad Pitt is until I saw Moneyball, and I was like, wow, they don't look alike, but somehow he got he got so much to the heart of Billy Bean. Like it gave me goosebumps at times. Like, how is he doing this? So I really enjoyed both a lot. I would just say, from a baseball perspective, I wouldn't agree with some of it, with maybe some of the premises. And then the movie, the only thing that really, really bothered me, obviously some things were wildly fictionalized, and I really didn't. None of that really bothered me too much, except for the portrayal of Art Howe, who is an absolutely wonderful, extremely in shape gentleman who is smart, knows his baseball, got along very well with the team. The sort of the blow-ups with Billy were, every manager and GM has their disagreements, and I don't think that they were nearly to the point either the book or certainly the movie made them. I mean, he kind of became the straw man villain. It was very unfortunate and just not at all remotely accurate, and it really hurt Art Howe. He was really upset by that portrayal.
It's a shame.
And I don't blame him. I don't blame him. And that's still, I like the movie a lot, but that was frankly upsetting and unfair. Paul DiPodesta was the assistant GM. He asked for his name to be changed in the movie, and they did it. I think they should have given Art Howe the same option.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, it would be hard to change Art Howe's name because he was too. He was too visible. I mean, people said, "Wait a minute, that the A's manager is Art Howe." But at that point, a lot of people had no idea who Paul DiPodesta is, so they could get away with that kind of license. I don't think they could have gotten away with Art Howe. Philip Seymour Hoffman's a great actor, but he couldn't pull it off physically, no matter how great he was. Brad Pitt, I just remember saying to my girlfriend, now my wife at the time, I was very impressed that he even took that role because he was doing so many blockbusters. And here he was, behind a movie that, could have, for all intents and purposes, bombed.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up that you didn't is I think they gave Carlos Pena a really, really short shrift. They kind of made it look like, we're getting rid of you or we're benching you to play Hatterberg. Like that was a really good move, while Pena ended up having an amazing career.
Exactly.
And he was a saber to say. He walked a lot. It wasn't like it wasn't like he was walking 20 times a year. The guy was, eventually started walking 90, 100 times a year. So I don't know if in the long run that was such a good idea, but I would be pissed off if I were him.
Yeah, the A's over the years pulled the plug on a couple really good young position players too early. It's not an exact science, even with all the data that they have and their methods, which are so good most of the time. But they did the same exact thing with Carlos Gonzalez.
Okay.
Going back a little bit in your career, when you started out as a female writer, going into locker rooms, both baseball and basketball, as I know you've covered a lot of basketball teams, was there still some animus there from players regarding women in the locker room, or were you already past that point?
I was in the kind of the second wave, and while certainly there were others sort of my generation who had problems, the only people I ever had problems with were people that everyone had problems with. I don't think it would be any secret like who the most difficult baseball player in the Bay Area was when I was covering both teams for the Sacramento Bee, and I had pretty extreme problems with that player, but everyone did. That wasn't. I didn't feel necessarily singled out for my gender. I really have not. I get asked that a lot. And I find it strange these days because there are so many wonderful women covering all professional sports.
Oh, for sure.
Excellent, amazing women in baseball, and I want to say especially ice hockey has for me almost all the top writers in ice hocky are women.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't watched hockey regularly for years, but that's good to know. Now I may start.
Where you are, that's some really fun stuff.
Well, yeah.
What's that?
Go ahead, Mark.
I'm over here in South Jersey. Yeah, the Flyers fans are nothing like the Flyers fans. I mean, or even the Eagles fans right now with everything going on. Holy cow!
Yeah.
I'm 6 miles away from the stadium, and I swear I can hear things going on if I just stand in my backyard. It's that loud.
We don't need to talk about the Eagles and the Niners.
Susan, I've been a Dolphins fan. I've been a Dolphins fan for 50 years. Now, I mean, I was just a kid when I started, but it was fun early on. But they haven't even been in a Super Bowl since 1984.
I know.
Crazy.
It's really, they're the Mariners of football.
And Susan, we covered this briefly before, but are you a big fan of baseball history? Do you?
I mean, I wouldn't say like I'm an obsessive fan, but certainly, yeah. I mean, I would say I'm generally been a traditionalist, and I certainly have paid an awful lot of attention to baseball. I'm on the Eras committee, so I better be.
And if you could sit down and interview anybody from the past, baseball wise, if you had somebody you could talk to, one interview.
If you make me boil it down to one, I would say maybe Clemente. Ted Williams would be on my list. I mean, obviously Rube Wardell would be very high on my list.
Oh my God! Yeah, there you go.
I'm not sure I could pick one, but yeah, I would eventually pick one of those three.
Interesting. You didn't choose Babe Ruth.
I think his story's been told a lot.
Well, yes and no, because let's say you were able to interview him about things no writers were able to write about back then. You might get a really hell of a story.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
I think it's been done too much.
I'll tell you what. I love you for two things now, Susan: Clemente and the shift. I'll be talking about that with David for months to come.
Thanks, fellas. Yeah, you can always use me if you want to
I mean, my position on the shift is not fixed, ironically. We'll
talk again next year after we see what.
Yeah, I certainly want to see the data to see what happens, because anything that brings batting averages up and maybe a little bit more of a balanced offense back to the game. I at this point I'm kind of for that. But
yeah, we're all tired of the strikeout, I think. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for appearing with us.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I'm
glad. And just continued great work. And of course, I'll see you on MLB every now and then. And good. Yeah, just best of luck to you, Susan.
Yeah, health and happiness. Thank you again.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, have a great one, Susan. Be good.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, there you go, David. That was a whole lot of fun. And as I said, Clemente and the shift are in my back pocket now. All right.
I have no problem with Clemente. I think he was a great player. I will say this, and you're not going to like it. I think he was a bit of an overrated player. And again, anything great can still be overrated. I always hate the misunderstanding of the word, because as soon as you say something's overrated, people respond with anger as if you said, I don't like this. I think it's bad.
But Susan changed my perspective on when she said of their era,
Mm-hmm.
and that now I'm looking at everything in a whole different light of their era, and I'm looking at the Hall of Fame as a museum. So, oh shit.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Billy Movie is overrated. We tried to get him on the show. I'm gonna be forthcoming about this. We tried to get him on the show, and he said, "Sorry, your numbers aren't good enough." It's like, come on, man, help us out here. Yeah. Do us a solid. Maybe our numbers will get better if people like you are on. Anyway.
But I'll tell you, that was a fascinating interview, though.
I with Moomy, I did the only thing I could. I sent him to the cornfield by unfriending him on Facebook. But yeah, it was a fascinating interview, and she's very engaging, and I'm sure if she wasn't busy, we could have spoken with her for hours about baseball.
Well, she's opened up the door for next year after the season, when we can talk about whether the shift was good or bad for baseball. So we'll have to get back in touch with her next preseason. Yeah, that'd be good. But that was great. Yeah, I'm glad she could pull over and make the time. I know she did it from her car in a.
That's just so great,
which is cool.
That she did that. Anyway, if you want to move on to a super stump the bash, I'm kind of ready for it.
My friends, tonight is we're going to do something a little bit different. We really weren't prepared to do Stump the Bash, but we came up with this idea of taking some of the old questions that David did not pick, run them in through a blender, and we're going to play Super
Stump the Bash, Stump the Bash,
Stump the Bash,
Stump the Bash, Stump the Bash.
So this is Super Stump the Bash. The way this is going to work is I pulled out some old lists of Stump the Bash, and the questions that were not used, I found 34 of them. So you're going to have to kind of bear with me because they're on the original lists here. What we're going to do is we're going to have 7 questions, and they're going to actually be picked randomly via that neat little spinning wheel that I have. So David still has to get 21 points in 7 questions, which is an average of 3 points a question. We think he can do it, but here's how it's going to work. You see the spinning number?
Yeah.
We're going to spin. And each question has its own number. So there's question number 1 tonight is going to be number 25. And as I said, please bear with me because
I have no idea what that means, but
neither do I. But here's what it means. All right. So question number 25 comes from the chart position number 36.
Okay, I do remember that chart position.
Chart position number 36.
I didn't pick. Obviously, I only picked 5 years, so there's 6 others eligible. So
this is going to be chart position number 36. So here it is. Question number 25 comes from 1969.
Okay.
Chart position number 36. This song was written by Shel Silverstein.
Oh, these are early before your questions got really involved.
Yes.
Oh, I should know this because I've read that. And
chart position year ending number 36, 1969.
Oh, David,
trust me, I've got to go through these slowly because I haven't reread these in a long time. But
yeah, and I know what pop hit. Well, I know a few pop hits he wrote, but I guess I'm just not thinking of this one. So no, I do not know.
Question number 2 for 4 points. The song has an unusual AABCCB rhyme scheme and performed mostly in the speech style of talking blues rather than conventional singing.
God, I have no idea what the AABB thing was. Other than I thought that Mick Jagger was singing AABB, Get Off of My Cloud, when I first heard it.
Yeah.
That's, when you're hearing stuff on transistor radio. All right. I just distracted myself. Read the question after the AABB stuff.
Yeah, it's performed mostly in the speech style of talking blues rather than conventional singing.
That should be enough. And it's number 36. Talking blues. Not coming to me.
You should get it here for 3 points. What you got to average. The core story of the song was inspired by humorist Gene Shepard, a close friend of Silverstein's, who was often taunted as a child because of his feminine-sounding name.
Oh, I assume it's A Boy Named Sue by Johnny Cash.
3 points. You got it. You're right on the average. A Boy Named Sue by Johnny Cash. Chart position number 36 in 1969. Good job. Good job.
You know what? That I didn't realize that Shel Silverstein wrote. So okay.
I didn't realize he wrote it either. All right. Question number 8 it is, or position number 8 on here. Let me find Mr. Position number 8. All right. It comes from chart position number 50. Question number 8 is also from 1969.
Wow. I guess I wasn't picking that year all the time. Okay.
Maybe not. But again, I said I might be wrong as my memory might fail me. So if we've done this question before, it's easy for you. All right.
I would have us throw it out. I'm not going to.
Clue number 1 for 5 points. The principal idea of the song was made famous at the turn of the 20th century in a poem by Rosamond Gerard, the wife of the poet and playwright Edmond Rostand, Cyrano de Bergerac.
Wait, what's the Wait, what is the Cyrano de Bergerac?
Wrote Cyrano de Bergerac.
Oh, okay.
So,
but was the song inspired by that?
Yes, the principal idea of the song was made famous at the turn of the 20th century in a poem by Rosamond Gerard, who happened to be the wife of poet and playwright Edmond Rostand.
Yeah. My brain's not working too well right now, but I don't know if I would know that anyway. So let's move on.
All right. Question number 2, 4 points. The song was written by Pat Upton. Song was produced by Sonny.
No, we did do this. We did do this one.
Did we?
Yeah, it's more today than yesterday, right?
Well, but why don't we just give it to you? We're doing 7 questions. You got more today than yesterday. 4 points.
I don't want to take credit for one I've already done.
We're going to put an asterisk by that, just like Scott Rowland in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, I knew it then, but
it's all good. Here we go. Oh,
an asterisk by Scott Rowland?
I don't know.
He has no asterisk.
I know. I'm just saying.
Susan didn't convince you that he belonged. Okay.
Well, I don't know. It's still the Hall of Good, but it's okay because it is a museum. I get it. I understand. I don't have a hard time with it. I've been ill. Here we go. Chart position once again. Chart position number 36. This is 1967.
Okay.
So number 36 in 1967 was written and produced by Holland, Dozier, and Holland for Motown.
Gee, there could only be one song.
One song. Listen, this is back in the early days when we were doing these questions. So,
all right. So this is 67. So
67.
I can just kind of try to take my pick here.
Yeah. You're fine. You're
no, it's all right.
Super Stump the Bash.
All right, let's see. Well, let's go through all the different groups on Motown who had hits that year. I think I may not be right on every year, but I mean on the year, but
it was the only.
This is chart position 36, so this is a pretty big one. I'll just go with Bernadette by the Four Tops.
It's not Bernadette, no.
Okay.
Instrumentation for the track was by the Funk Brothers, with additional background vocals by the Andantes, Marlene Barrow, Jackie Hicks, and Louvain Demps.
Well, since the Funk Brothers were on just about everything, that doesn't help a lot. The background vocalists were probably on a lot of the hits also. So let me just try to find another one.
Yeah, that's what you can do.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Let's see. What was... Again, I have to remember the years. And this is 67. So I didn't live it. Let's think. The Happening by the Supremes?
It is not. It is not. But that's going to lead us right into the third clue, which is kind of funny you said that, because it was originally recorded in 1964, 3 years prior, but shelved by the label as sounding too much like a Supreme song.
All right. Well, we know it ain't something by the Temptations then. So that narrows it down to the Marvelettes or Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, or no, let's see. I mean, I don't know that Mary Wells had any big hits at that point. Let's go with Jimmy Mack by the Marvelettes.
See, you got 3 points right there.
All right.
Jimmy Mack by actually Martha and the Vandellas.
Pardon?
Martha and the Vandellas.
Vandellas, yeah. Did I say the Marvel? Yeah, I don't know
You
why.
did, but I knew where.
I know who it is. I
was
just going through the female acts, and
you got it.
had a brain fart.
That's pretty darn good for not really having too much of a clue in the first and second.
Well, I mean, it could be so many things. Big hits on Motown in 1967. Yeah, we got a few.
Well, I was just checking here. I also guessed Bernadette. Yeah.
Oh, look, it could have. I mean, and that could have been right, except Bernadette didn't happen to finish number 36. Okay.
I could listen to this sound all day.
So wait, have we done 3 questions so far?
Yeah.
I've got 10 points.
You're at 10 points.
The second one's a little dubious, so we'll see. If I'm like borderline at the end, we're gonna have to throw in a new question. But
hold on, I gotta find this one. This one came from a long time ago because it's actually in a handwritten little book. So this must have tried to stump you on something really good here. Oh, this is chart position number 99.
Oh, that's later than 36, by the way. You did 36 earlier than 99 because I requested you do some lower numbers, and I think 99.
Oh well, this is just where the pile came from because it might have lost the pile. But we're at chart position number 99, and the question comes from year 1968.
Oh God. Okay.
So this 1968 soul single, written by the artist along with Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff for the Mercury label.
Well, it's on Mercury, and it's I think I know who the artist is, but I can't think of what hit that artist had in 67. But let me think if it could be another artist on Mercury. I'm thinking it's a Jerry Butler song, but I'm not.
I gotta be careful I don't hum it. I almost started humming the song.
I'm thinking it's a Jerry Butler song, but it's kind of a breakup to makeup thing. I'm totally blanking on what hits he had in.
I was actually going to ask you the same clues again for breakup to makeup, see if you could remember it.
I think I would get the 5 points if you did that. Shit. What was? Maybe it's not, because maybe he didn't have any big hits in 67. But who else could it be? On Mercury, that's the thing. I'm trying to think of who else in 68 might have had a but you said you were going to hum this song, so obviously it was.
I was about to.
So it's something that's reasonably popular.
I know it.
But other than, there's one group it could be, but I can't imagine the whole group along with those two would have written it. So, yeah, boy, I can't remember his hit from that year if there was one. I'll just say Moody River by Jerry Butler. No.
This track was the artist's second number 1 on the Billboard R&B chart.
Okay.
But was also a top crossover hit.
I'm just trying to remember what hit. I mean, maybe I have the wrong artist, but I can't. I'm trying to think of who else was on Mercury with soul at that point. And maybe it's obvious, but it's not coming to me. Hey, Mr. Dream Merchant by Jerry Butler?
No.
All right.
Clue number 3 for 3 points. This track has also been covered by Al Cooper and Diana Ross and the Supremes.
No. Al Cooper. Yeah, I don't know.
It's taken from the album titled "The Iceman Cometh."
Well, I know I had the right artist. This is going to be another stylistic thing.
Yeah, and the last clue is not going to give you much. So if you get it here, you get it.
I can't. This is a little. I'm not as ashamed because I wasn't listening to radio yet in '68. Yeah. But still, I should know what hit he had. Trying to remember. Those are like the only two things I can think of. Those two songs that I mentioned. I don't want to hold everyone up. I don't think it's. Oh fuck! Western Union Man by Jerry Butler.
I had to give you a little hint there.
Thank you.
Just enough. Hey West.
Oh Christ.
Hey Western Union Man, Jerry Butler.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That was a good one.
All right. I certainly know the song, but not something that's embedded in my memory that way.
No.
Okay.
That's pretty good. All right. That's after.
So how many points do I have?
Well, right now you're at 10. You're at 12 points. So in 3 questions.
So I'm right on the line.
3. You still need 3.
Yeah,
but
all right. Can we have a 70s question, please?
It's random. I can't.
I know. I'm saying that to the spirits, not to you.
The spirits have picked. Song number 7. That comes
from 1970, and Let It Be Spirit in the Sky.
Well, this is back to chart position number 88.
88. Okay.
Chart position 88. This track was released.
Wait. What year?
Oh, this is 1974.
All right, at least I get a 70s year here. Okay.
74. This track was released as the 3rd single from this artist's 16th studio album.
Oh, that's it, huh?
Yeah. And so it was the 3rd single in 74 it charted, but it's from this artist's 16th studio album.
All right, well, let me think about that a bit. Obviously, someone who's been around a while. 16th studio album.
Yeah.
And this is 74.
1974.
All right. God, did we get this question? I don't think so.
I don't think so, no.
I don't know if he'd had 16 studio albums by this point, but he might have. You Haven't Done Nothing by Stevie Wonder?
No.
Okay.
This was recorded for the Tamla label with the B-side Blame It on the Sun.
Oh, God. Well, it's probably Stevie Wonder then, so I now have to just pick Stevie Wonder songs, and it's 74.
You're still damn good, man.
Yeah, but I'm still damn wrong. So what was... So the 3rd single from... All right, let me try to see. The song I had chosen was the song I said before was You Haven't Done Nothing.
Right. Yeah.
How about Don't You Worry About a Thing by Stevie Wonder?
There you go. Four points. Jumps you right ahead. Don't You Worry About a Thing. Stevie Wonder, chart position number 88 in 1974.
Easily my favorite song of Stevie's from the 70s. Actually, I shouldn't say easily. There's a lot of great ones. That is my favorite.
So go on. All right, we got 2 more questions to go here on Super Stump the Bash. David's not being stumped so far tonight.
Well, I've had a little help, but
we've had a little help. It's okay. We can be flexible. I'm just really happy about Clemente and the shift.
Oh, for God's sake.
All right, song number 22. Oh, sometimes you just have a good night. I don't know. All right, chart position number 46. Track number 22 comes from 1974 as well.
And what position did you say? 26?
46.
46, okay.
46 in 1974. The track was written by Sherman Marshall and Philip T. Pugh and produced by Tom Bell. released on Atlantic Records with the B-side Just As Long As We Have Love.
Nice. So 74. And who? I know Tom Bell was one of the writers. Who else did you say?
Sherman Marshall and Philip T. Pugh.
And you said it was on Atlantic?
On Atlantic Records with the B-side Just As Long As We Have Love.
Star position 46, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
From 74. Well, there are certainly some candidates, but I'll go with Then Came You by the Spinners and Dionne Warwick.
Look at that. You not only got the Spinners and Dionne Warwick, you got Then Came You for 5 points, and you're already at 21. So this last question becomes academic. You can breathe.
Well, I want to do well on it because
I know you want to do well because you want to just go way past the 21. But
yeah, so I can say that the help wasn't necessary.
Then came you, Dionne Warwick, and the Spinners. Great track.
Yes,
all right. Super Stump the Bash. Last question of this Material Issues episode number 89. We're going to go to number 14. All right.
I was hoping it would be 13 because that's actually a pretty lucky number for me.
It's a pretty lucky number. Let me find it here. We gotta double back through all the massive paperwork. People don't understand the amount of paperwork involved in Material Issues.
They do now.
They do now.
My lucky number's 1.
All right. Here we go. This is chart. What chart position is this? Hold on. I gotta find it. This is 67, 68. All right. This is chart position number 81 in 1971.
Oh, wow. Okay.
81 in 71. This was a rhythm and blues song written by Dave Bartholomew. New Orleans rhythm and blues singer Smiley Lewis first recorded the song in 1955. The lyrics tell of the return of a former lover who is rebuffed.
I think we did this question. Is it I'll just guess, and because I don't know if it's not this right answer. So if I'm wrong, then we'll go on. If I'm right, then we'll throw it out and do one more. Is it I Hear You Knocking by Dave Edmunds?
Yes, it is.
All right, we did that.
Did we do it? Okay. All right. Let's go on to chart position number 4 in 1965.
Oh, chart position number 4?
This is
in 65. Okay, so I get an easy position and a hard year. But
yes.
I'll know this song at least. It ain't going to be no Betty Davis thing. Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte. Okay.
Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte.
All
this was the remake of Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte.
Yeah.
Now, all right. 1965, chart position number 4, a popular song written by Sylvia Fricker in 1961. It was originally recorded by Ian and Sylvia.
Oh. Well, it's obviously not the song I'm thinking of.
This is a good one.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
All right, 4 points. The song was written in a bathtub in a suite at the Hotel Earl in Greenwich Village. Fricker wrote the song, her first composition, in the bathroom because it was the only place the cockroaches would not go.
Oh, God. Of course, for a number 4 position, the clues are really obscure. Sylvia Fricker.
That's funny.
Number 4 in 1965. I mean, obviously in 65, you're thinking, Beatles, Stones, Dylan, but it's obviously not any of those. At least I don't think it is. So no, I don't know.
Yeah, the clues don't get any. They're still strange. Clue number 3. It was originally performed by Fricker and her future husband Ian Tyson as the duo Ian and Sylvia. and they recorded it in 1963 for their 1964 album on the Vanguard label called Northern Journey. Ian and Sylvia re-recorded the song in 1972 with their band Great Speckled Bird, reaching number 4 on the Canadian easy listening chart.
And I don't have that album, of course.
Great Speckled Bird. Everybody learning something on this clue.
I know I am. Wow. I mean, what's one of the biggest? I should just be saying, what's one of the biggest hits of '65? And
yeah, finished.
That's the toughest year for me. So,
it's a good one. Good question. Good question to finish up.
It is a great question. I wonder if I'm even going to get a point on it. Now, I would have thought that these people. I would have thought the artist wrote this one, but I don't know. Is it Sounds of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel?
No, it is not.
Yeah, they must have written that.
All right. So this cover song was an up-tempo version with slightly altered lyrics and melody by this California pop quintet on the A&M label with the B-side Small World.
You Are on My Mind by the We5.
All right. We didn't completely stump you.
Well, I got 2 points that probably were made up a bit for what we got. So I'll say that I just snuck in.
You snuck in. You
snuck in and didn't get stumped.
Well, you legitimately got 21 points if you would have, not gotten that one question and gotten.
No, I don't think I legitimately got 21 because we did a question that we'd already done. But
that's all right. That was fun.
Still pretty good. I'm certainly
version of Super Stump the Bash tonight, using some of the old questions that we had not gotten to, which I think is fun.
Yeah, we can do many more of them.
Somebody got upset and said "fick."
Well, Mark, let me tell you what that's about, because I don't think you know. I know who said it, which probably will tell you who said it also. But there was a book written about the Beach Boys called Heroes and Villains,
right?
Written by a guy named Stephen Gaines. It's a very sensationalized book, and for that reason, it's extremely entertaining. Now, the truth value of it, I mean, David Leaf, who we had on, we talked a little bit about the book. He seems to think that most of what's in there is true. He would know better than I, but I think of some of those stories, and it's like they've been embellished at the very least. Brian Wilson, he married Marilyn, Marilyn, who became Marilyn Rovell, who became Marilyn Wilson. Her parents, trying to remember what the guy, Irving and May Rovell, the Wilson boys would hang out at their house a lot. And May was very well known for cooking for the boys at any hour, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. She'd get up and make them meals. But she would not say the word fuck. The strongest thing she would say was fick. And John and I were talking a little bit about that for some reason a few days ago.
Is that funny?
She said, they said, I think what it was they were going to pay her to say fuck. Oh, thanks, Jim. They were going to pay her to say fuck, and she had agreed, but she just couldn't come out with it. So she'd say fick. And apparently that put the boys in convulsions. Laughter.
I love it. Isn't that great that we had a question that said, "What was her name? Fickers?"
Flick. Yeah. Oh, her. Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. That's good stuff.
Yeah. I don't think I ever knew that Ian and Sylvia did "You Are on My Mind," but
I didn't know that they redid it in '72 with a band called Great Speckled.
No, I've seen that album. There was never anything compelling about it for me to buy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. Wow, a huge Canadian hit too. Okay.
Yeah. That's good. What a great episode. I keep this. It was a surprise to have Susan come on when we didn't think she.
It really was. I wish we could have announced it earlier, but I was having a hard time getting a hold of her, so I wasn't sure if she would be on. I would have announced it on more baseball groups if I had known. But hey, she showed up. She did, she was really into it, and obviously has been interviewed many times, so she's good at it.
Well, and it'll be on the archives too. So once we get it out there, anybody really interested can also watch it on archives, which is great as well. So
the idea, I mean, we can argue about the shift forever, but I agree in theory that major league players should be able to adjust and hit the other way or whatever they need to do to combat the shift. But when you've been hitting that way for all those years and you're going against major league caliber pitchers, to adjust your hitting style to that, I think that's asking a lot. I think that may be asking too much.
She made a good point with the spin rates and how different. She even said it's a wonder anybody can get a hit. Period.
Yeah.
But
so to ask them, in order for most of these players to deal with a shift, these are all, most of these guys are going to be pull hitters anyway. That's one of the reasons why righties have an advantage against lefty pitchers and vice versa, because they're able to pull the ball. So the shift is going to take hits away from them.
Right.
And that's another reason why home runs have gone way up. Hitters are saying, what's the use? I can't beat this shift, but the one thing they can't stop me with is a home run. Shift. Unless they shift in the stands, they're not going to catch it.
Well, I think each stadium should be able to raise and lower the fence for each batter, if they want to.
Yeah, why not?
Well, I wanted to do a follow-up with her just about, interleague play. She said she didn't really have a problem with it, but I could tell she had a little bit of problem with it. Because as I said, I always loved the fact that when it came to the World Series, it was two teams that had not played each other the entire year. So that was an unknown, and that was exciting to me.
I totally get that.
I will give you the banning of the shift if you can bring back and give me no interleague play. So I'll trade you for that.
I can't do it. To paraphrase Robert Duvall in The Godfather, can't do it, Marky.
Yeah, do it, Marky.
I was really excited when I heard about interleague play because I really, World Series is great and all, but it's only going to be two teams playing each other. I really wanted to see what would happen if the National League played the American League, and there was always this talk over the years about the fastball, the AL being a curveball league and the NL being a fastball league, and the NL is better because they have more speed and blah, 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 blah. I really wanted to see which league was going to do better than the other one. And I wanted to see certain teams play each other that I knew I was never going to see. And as far as the World Series went, yeah, I thought about that. But I also realized that the World Series is the World Series. And even if these teams played each other during the year, those were just games. This is still going to be the World Series. And people are going to forget all that.
Yeah.
And the rivalries were really good for each team. To have the Yankees play the Mets every year, that was really good for baseball in general.
For the teams in baseball in general. I just, we always go back to our favorite teams and our favorite years. And when the Pirates played the Orioles in 71 and going up against 420 game winners, it's not like you could say, well, during the year they were 6-4 against the Orioles and they beat Cuellar twice. And you've seen it for them to go up against 420 game. You couldn't wait for every freaking game because it was just like, oh my God, is McNally going to be able to curveball his way through the lineup? Is Palmer going to blaze them with, and vice versa? How are the Pirates pitchers, these bunch of lame 12 and 14, season guys going to do against? I'm just saying, you know what I mean?
Steve Blass was pretty damn good. Now, what happened to him 2 years later? Yeah. Even he doesn't know.
But
I'm sure you remember as a Pirates fan what happened to Blass in '73. The most precipitous drop of any good major league player. And he still to this day has no idea what happened to him.
Yeah.
Well, and they have with the DH finally getting rid of pitchers hitting, which they should have done years ago. Because as I always say. And again, this is baseball history. For those baseball fans who don't know, the only reason pitchers hit in the first place was because when baseball started in the 1870s, pitchers tended to be the best athletes, and they could hit as well as anybody else. You have to remember that there was no specializing back then. So these guys were really good. These guys were as good hitters as anyone else. Over the years, of course, pitchers hitting became more and more diminished because pitchers were taking more time specializing their craft and not as much time, honing their hitting skills. So it got to the point where a lot of pitchers were just fucking helpless when they got to the plate. Yeah, there were always great ones in there. You always had your Don Drysdales and your Bob Lemons and your Red Ruffings and people like that who could hit almost as well as your average major league hitter. You always had that. But they really weren't any good. And the other thing about Tim Allen, I think DC Toon earlier talked about the strategy. If you really look at it, there's not a whole lot of strategy involved in managing in a situation. Should we pinch hit for him or should we? Of course you should, or of course you shouldn't. It's like almost every manager did the same thing with that. So the fact that the non-DH and the whole double switch thing, I mean, come on, everyone did it the same way. It wasn't strategy. It was just new situations created where people or not new situations rather, but situations where managers more or less did the same thing. So,
well, but in today's game, if you were a starting pitcher in the 8th inning and you've got a no-hitter and you're coming up and it's 2 outs and you now have to hit and the bases are loaded, you're not going to be pinch hit for it because you got a no-hitter going. In today's game, if the pitchers were still hitting, there'd be no question that you pinch hit, fuck the no-hitter and bring him out of the game. But there were other sides of the coin back in the day where a starting pitcher was, your hope was to go 9 innings. And if you were shutting down the other team, even if it's 1-0, bases loaded, bottom of the 8th, and you're up, they didn't pinch hit for him. If he's really manhandling the other team, it just didn't happen.
If you look if you look at studies on that, you tended to see that most managers did the same thing, even in those situations. And most of the time they would leave the guy in.
Yeah.
But as far as now having a guy with a no-hitter in the 8th inning, we're not going to see that anyway. So, I mean,
no, it's not going to happen.
These guys are going to be out of the game because they've reached their pitch count. It's very rare that they let guys pitch no-hitters anymore.
And Susan even said that. She was like, yeah, pitch counts of 100. She mentioned that briefly. Flip right by it, but it's true.
So I don't know. I've always loved the DH because I never thought pitchers should hit in the first place. I've always liked hitting. So the fact that it did extend some people's careers, or it allowed certain people to play full time that otherwise wouldn't have, I was always great with that. So I'm glad pitchers hitting is gone. I know a lot of people are never going to be, and I get it, but
I was laughing.
This is what makes it fun. We're always, we're always gonna, there's always going to be disagreements, and as long as they can be discussed in a friendly manner, and people don't end up hating each other or wanting to kill each other, that's all good.
I was watching a clip on YouTube today. It just happened to pop up. I don't know how or why, but probably the algorithms popped it up. But it was a late 70s Pirates Cubs game. Pirates were up by 1, bottom of the 9th, bases loaded for the Cubs, and Richie Hebner, former Pirate, is batting. Now, Richie Hebner was the classic pull hitter. All he could ever do back then was pull the ball. So the Pirates virtually put all 8 fielders, or 7 besides the catcher, all on the right side of the field. Chuck Tanner came out and he went like this. Everybody go over here, and they loaded it up. And it was Hebner against a left-handed pitcher, no less. And bases loaded, 2 outs, and he finally struck out. But it was hilarious in the fact that they put everybody. There was nobody on the left side of the field for that clip in that game.
And even back then, he never thought, let's just drop a bunt down the first base.
That's all he would have had to do. He just would have had to poke his bat out and just. Yeah. But now he's still
either his ego or lack of skill.
Well, former Pirate player going against his team, bases loaded. You know, he was
Yeah,
gonna
either
hit
ego or lack of ability to bunt. The one best trivia thing about Richie Hebner is he was one of the last players to have an off-season job. Do you remember what it was?
the gravedigger.
Yeah, he was a gravedigger. At a time when salaries were starting to escalate and players didn't have to work off season anymore, but he liked the job. He kept doing it.
Yeah, which is interesting. Yeah. And he always did that. He always pulled his shirt up in the back every time he went up to swing for some weird reason. He'd look like a hunchback with the uniform. It was great. I love Richie.
That's the kind of stuff we need to hear more of, because players' characteristics are things that people stop writing about and it gets lost to history. So I did not remember that. I didn't remember that about Hebner. So.
Every time he went up, he'd get into the step out of the batter's box, and as right as he was stepping in, he would go like this and pull the back up, and he always looked like there was so much uniform up over his neck. That's how he swung. And to me, the greatest characteristic is Stargell's bat twirl.
He twirled it like a baton. He was great.
He just kept doing this all the way up to right before the pitcher released the ball, when he would get.
I think it helped to exercise his wrist, because he had amazing wrists.
Yeah,
a very quick bat. But of all the guys with characteristics in the 70s, the one I remember the most was Mike Hargrove. The human rain delay was his name. After every pitch, he would step out and stop and fiddle with his uniform, his shoes, his spikes, everything. And now everybody does stuff like that. But back then, he was the only one who did it. So catchers, pitchers, umpires, they just get sick of him. But
I love it.
Anyway, we should probably wind this up, because most of the people listening probably hate baseball. Well, we probably lost a few of them.
No, we got some sticking
around. I promise next week we won't be talking about baseball.
What do we got going on?
Nor will we be talking about baseball the week after, and probably not for many weeks after. We don't generally bring baseball people on, but next week we're going to have Candy Chase, who was in an all-female garage band from the mid-'60s from Fort Worth, Texas, called Candy and the Canes. She was the lead singer, and it'll be great to hear her perspective on rock and roll, garage, how the females were treated by the males back then. I'm sure it wasn't all pleasant. We'll be able to hear about that from her. That'll be great. And then the following week, Mark got maybe the prize guest of the entire Material Issues. So tell us about that.
I don't know if it's a prize guest, but
he's up there,
because we've had a lot of great guests. Obviously a lot of great guests, but guitarist for everything XTC, Dave Gregory. I don't know. What do you say? Iconic. One of my favorite bands of all time.
Me too.
Just, they were so, what's the word I'm looking for? They were inventive, especially things that they did. And he was right there through it all. So member of XTC. What more can you say? Dave Gregory. Gonna be on the show. So
that's awesome that you got him, and I can't wait for that for sure.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
And we've got irons in the fire as usual. We'll definitely be telling you about more guests, and as usual, any week we don't have a guest, it'll be just us. We thought as of last night that it would be just us today, but fortunately Susan was able to join us, and it was fun. But so thank you, Tim. Next week we're back to music, folks. All the baseball people who left, you won't hear this, but we'll see you back here next week.
We'll see you back here. What a great show! Thank you, Susan Slusser, for being here tonight. That was fantastic. Man, I loved it. But David, have everyone. A great night.
Have a great night. Great rest of your week. Stay safe. We'll see you next week.
Cheers, everybody. All right, David, have a great one, buddy.
You too.